Welcome to another episode of Show Me a RAID Log, where we talk with industry leaders about how they use RAID logs and similar tools to help project managers succeed. I'm Kim Essendrup, co-host of the Project Management Happy Hour podcast and one of the founders of RAIDLOG.com. I've used RAID logs for years to save broken projects and to keep my own projects from getting broken, and I'm really excited to see how other leaders use theirs. And so with me today to talk RAID logs is Hussain Bandukwala. Hussain is a PMO and project management expert with over 20 years of experience advising SMBs, nonprofits, public sector, and Fortune 500 companies to enhance strategic execution and operational efficiency. As founder of Parwaaz Consulting, he specializes in PMO leadership, project management, and change management coaching. A LinkedIn learning instructor, industry speaker, and featured by Gartner Capterra, Hussain is a globally recognized PMO influencer known for driving successful PMOs and their integrations and performance. And I'm really happy to have Hussain with us today. Hussain, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Kim. It's really great to be here. Really appreciate the invite.
Yeah, I'm really happy. So I've had you on my PM Happy Hour podcast, and that was great. And it seems like we always see each other and catch up at industry events. And so it's really great to have you on today.
Thank you. And likewise, I mean, I really, really enjoy seeing the RAIDLOG booths and all the wonderful swag. I love the color purple. It just jumps out and stands out. So fantastic stuff there, Kim.
Well, I'd love to start by asking you a few questions about one of my favorite PM tools, the RAID log. Is that all right?
That's why we're here, Kim.
All right. First question. Can you tell us how you first learned about RAID logs?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. And that's something that I really would have to think about to sort of really pinpoint the accuracy, but I tell you, I've always known about risk registers. And I think I might have come across RAID logs maybe like a decade or so ago at one of our client projects where, they had everything combined together in one spreadsheet, right? Or one spreadsheet with different tabs, and they call it RAID logs. So I would say maybe about a decade or so ago. And I actually pretty much enjoyed it because it's much easier to sort of contain everything together than have different different artifacts and collaterals and templates flying around.
Absolutely. I always find it's interesting to find out how people learned about RAID logs because it's so much part of culture in an organization or taught from mentor to mentee, something that hopefully you can help us with today to try to break free of that and make RAID logs a little more well known.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, in fact, just today I finished off a a workshop on risks and issues and change management. And obviously, RAIDLOG was a part of that. But a lot of people, even today, don't know or have heard of what RAIDLOG is. Of course, I've also seen different variations of the RAIDLOG, such as CRAIDLOG,
Oh, yeah.
which has and things of that nature. But people still have heard of risk registers, but not everyone has heard of RAID logs. And I know, Kim, you're in the business of turning that around, right?
I'm hoping to. Well, I'd like to ask you a kind of a question around this. Knowing that you are really a well-known expert in the PMO field, do you see PMOs adopting RAID logs or ensuring that their teams are adopting RAID logs? Do you see that happen very often? And when you do, what kind of benefits do you see?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do see them adopting RAID logs. I do think that there's an appetite for looking at tools that consolidate those things together and sort of do it in a way which is seamless. So, right, in the way that when you have things at the project level, then things, get bubbled up at the portfolio level. Uh, for maturing PMOs, that is definitely a need. Having said that, I work with PMOs of all flavors, and there are certain PMOs that are just even helping, their stakeholders figure out the difference between a risk and an issue, right? And so in those situations, even fundamental basic risk registers will, make the cut. And it doesn't matter if you've got all the different things like the factors, the statuses, the progress, the management of the risk, you know, those are all long shots. Even if they have a risk identified and documented, is a big win, right? So I do see a mix across the board, but I do see that there are a lot of work management, task management, task tools out there that have some sort of RAID log components, but a lot of it is very manual. And you sort of have to sort of create everything on your own, whether it's a tabular format or sort of some sort of embedment, and they can be really, really frustrating.
It really can. And I like your insight there that we can get distracted with all of the different tools and analyses that you could do in risk management, qualitative analysis, quantitative analysis. Am I going to run a Monte Carlo analysis? And it can be, I think, maybe almost distracting when really, at the very minimum, even if you're at a very basic level of maturity, just stopping and saying, where can these projects go wrong? That can be beneficial.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's the ultimate basic, right? And to me, then the next step really is okay, let's understand that mitigation is just one way to manage a risk. There are three other ways to respond to risks as well. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes just getting into the complexities of it can really get us off the grid and just very slowly building the appetite and the muscle to let's proactively identify risks and then manage them. Just get that into the habit can be a game changer for projects and companies.
Absolutely. Well, another question I have for you is, can you tell us about a time when using a RAID log helped save a project, whether it wasn't your project, maybe it was somebody you worked with, or maybe it helped keep you from having to save a project in the first place?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I still say this to a lot of people that I speak with is that, risks are the steering wheels of your projects and not your schedules, right? Because the more proactively you manage risks and you contain them from becoming issues, that means proactively you are reducing the number of issues on your project, and therefore the probability for your project to succeed is higher, right? And so just focusing on that heavily is extremely, extremely important. I recall a time where I was running an IT uh, corrective actions project for an IT audit that was done, internal IT audit that was done. It was all hands on deck, and it required a lot of regulatory and perception components to it, making sure that our team was always available and hands on deck was a risk that was always on top of mind for me, right? And just making sure that that risk was always identified and kept at the forefront for the entirety of the project across the sponsors and the team was critical in making sure that we had everyone available as we needed them to address the corrective actions in a timely manner. We had a lot of corrective actions to deal with as part of the audit, and it didn't have a good look in the first place. And so any sort of slippages there would mean that the audit team would just again be hounding on us and looking at us with a hawk's eye, and someone definitely didn't need anyone sort of breathing down our shoulders for that one. So making sure that everything was just going smoothly and crisp was super important. And so making sure that the team was available and then making sure that they're delivering on quality things and addressing the corrective action in a timely manner was really, really important. We were able to turn that around, and the CTO had a really big smile on her face when that was done.
It's nice. It's nice when your sponsors smile at the end of a project. It's good.
That's right.
So, as useful as RAID logs have been in your experience, sometimes every tool has some challenges and when we use them. So, what has been your biggest pain point when using a RAID log?
Personally, Kim, for me, the biggest challenge has been around maintaining the risk log,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because, when you're starting off a project or, when you have certain very deep status meetings that bubble up risks, it's easy to sort of populate them, populate the log with the risks, but then making sure that they are maintained and tracked on a regular basis. When we're running from meeting to meeting to meeting, it's barely do we have enough time to think proactively about risks. To maintain the ones that we already have is another one, because essentially it becomes like a mini checklist, or action item tracker, if you will, right? Because you have your project schedule with all the key activities, but then to address the risks, you have these other action items that need to be taken care of, and we've got to be on top of them, so that those risks ultimately don't become issues. So I think for me, maintaining the log in a seamless way has been, I would say, the biggest pain point.
It is a challenging, I think the worst thing I see is when a project manager comes in and they say, "Oh, I've got a new project," and they fill out their RAID log. "Ooh, this is good. I followed PMI." They fill it all out. And if it's a spreadsheet, they put it in SharePoint, never to be seen again, Uh,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
even if you don't do that, it does take effort. I mean, it's the statistics show that you get a 20-to-1 return on investing in risk management. So you have to make the investment, but there certainly is the return.
Absolutely.
So while we're talking specifically about tools, everyone is talking about artificial intelligence. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts around how AI may impact, or maybe is already impacting, project management, particularly around RAID management?
That's a really, really great question there, Kim, because I'll tell you, one of the things that I see with a lot of PMO leaders and a lot of project teams is the fact that many don't proactively manage risks, or take the time to proactively identify risks.
Mhm.
And there are various reasons for that. One is they might not know how to find risks, or they might not be able to bubble things up from their team, or they might think that it's a fault of their own, and so they don't want to, get fingers raised at them, or they might think that the stakeholders might get unnecessarily worried. Many other reasons as well, but ultimately, I think the biggest challenge is to sort of, you go into a status meeting, you ask the team, "Hey, do we have any risks to talk about?" Obviously, people will say no, and the meeting's done, right? And everybody
Hey,
walks out happily with a smile, right?
yay, no risks.
No risks. Woo! Um, but and so what I think that AI can do, and what generative AI in specifically can do, is really help you get a leg up on proactively identifying this risk. So without divulging confidential information around the project,
Mhm.
you can say that, "Hey, I'm working on a project with blah blah blah. These are some of the parameters. Can you identify certain risks around?" Boom. And it's going to go ahead and spit out all the possible risks. You can even categorize them by, types of risks, by risk factors, by different categories, etc., etc. But essentially, even if you are someone who's not a subject matter expert on the type of project that you're running, or it's the first time that you're ever running a specific type of project, you can ask generative AI to come up with 20 risks that you think you should be aware of, and you have a solid list of risks that you can go and start discussing that with your team, right? Instead of thinking about it, wasting time, hoping, someone will actually come up with something on their own. This is something that's already ready to go, that you can, either validate, invalidate, or say, "You know what, okay, we're going to go ahead and keep an eye out on that." To me, cutting out that brainstorming part, overcoming some, personality and ego issues, addressing the knowledge gap is what generative AI can do wonders. And I think whether it's at the beginning of the project, during planning, execution, or whichever phase you want, you can capitalize on these on that, and make your risks count.
It's kind of a nice way to avoid some biases, right? If we have biases to think about certain types of risks and not others, so maybe it can give us a more, I guess, well-rounded perspective. Or maybe you've got some people in the room and you want to say, "Well, I have a risk about your technical area." The AI
Yeah,
can come up with
yeah,
that. and be a little more, I guess, less biased or seem a little more impartial and start those conversations. Great.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder, do you have any favorite tips or tricks in using RAID logs that you can share with our audience?
Just be creative ways to block time
Mm.
to to manage risks or even ideate them. I would say, to me personally, I think that always has been a challenge, right? So, instead of jumping from one thing to the other, just block out time and maintain the log. Because, like I said earlier, it's very easy to populate the log initially. There's a lot of eager beaver and high energy going into that, but maintaining and sustaining that requires a bit of discipline. And if you don't block your calendar, then it's not going to happen. So I know it's not a very fancy or slick trick, but a very simple one that I think can do wonders.
Block your calendar so you can maintain and sustain. I like it. That's great. Well, outstanding. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to join us today and share some of your project management experience. Now, if our audience wants to find out more about all the cool things that you're doing, how can they best do that?
So they can follow me on LinkedIn, Kim. I'm very active there. I post a lot of daily tips and tricks on PMOs and project management. I also have a weekly newsletter called the PMO Playbook that I send out to my email list, and people can and find me there as well.
All right. And we'll have links for all those in the notes for this video. Finally, Hussein, thank you so much for taking time to join us today and showing us your RAID log.
Thanks for having me here, Kim. Thank you so much.
All right. For our audience, if you'd like to step up your project management game, you can check out our RAIDLOG application at raidlog.com. We're bringing the tried and true RAIDLOG into the 21st century with the only platform totally dedicated to giving project managers and PMO leaders the tools that they need to succeed in delivery, starting with the RAIDLOG. Come and check it out at raidlog.com.